Hello.
Paulette, Parneshia, hi.
Hi. How you all doing?
How are we doing?
We're living in a pandemic. Quarantined. Haven't seen our friends in a while.
It's a funny question, isn't it? How are you doing? Because someone asked me the other day, how are you doing? And I got that look on my face and she said, it's okay. How are you really doing? That's what I'd like to hear. Like, how are you really doing? It's nice. I don't know. I find that there's a little more room now, right? To not just brush everything under the rug and pretend you're fine. I don't know. I'm finding that. How are you all feeling right now?
Well, you said it perfect. Like, there's more room to move around in that question. I think we were really casual.
Casual. I like that. Well,
that question of how are you doing? Like, I'm fine. How are you? That was the normal part of before. But I find myself asking that question, not just like, how are you doing, obviously in a pandemic, but how's your humanity doing right now?
I mean, checking in with our humanity right now is, it's a big task.
Yeah. I mean, when you ask people now, how are you doing? You see so much. It's not just what's going on right now. I think what we're dealing with right now is forcing us to deal with so much that was going on in our lives, in our history so long ago. So you see like that first like 10, 15 seconds of like, I'm okay kind of thing. And then like, you see a lot of that going on. So I know that question was a casual question, not before, but it's a survival question now.
It is a survival question. And so speaking of history and where we're coming from, we got right into the coziness and forgot to introduce ourselves. So one of you who are we? Why are we here? What have we written? Are we writing? Parneshia, you want to kick it off?
Well, I can start. Okay, I'll start. I'm Courtney Jones. I am a writer and an editor, a book lover, a food lover, a world lover. I'm the editorial director of trade and engagement at Northwestern University Press. I'm also a poet, and I'm just kind of floating about in the world and moving around. I have, a book called Vessel, which is published by Milkweed, one of my favorite spaces in the world for so many people, and not just me. But yeah, I'm a poet, writer, editor. I eat really good food. I talk about it and do all that kind of stuff.
It's an awesome book, and it's a fantastic press. Milkweed is among the best of the best. Paulette, who are you?
I'll go. I'll do who am I? I am someone who's very happy to be here. I love a lot of the same things that Parneshia loves. I love good food. I have been cooking my way through this. As I wrote a whole blog post, so I'm just cooking my way through this. I made onion jam because I'm like, well, I don't know what else to do. I need to just see a knife go through an onion and do that over and over, and then just watch it for 3 hours. Like, this is all I can do right now. So I am a writer and writing coach. I'm the author of Welcome to the Writer's Life, which I was very happy when Poets and Writers selected it as one of the best books for writers. That was my moment of like, okay, I did enough. It's all good. No one's going to like drag me out and be like, you're a fraud, as we all feel like sometimes. And I keep a blog at welcometotherwriterslife.com. And during the pandemic, I started to do a meditation and free write called the Saturday Writing Sanctuary. And that's been an addition when asking what we all might need right now. And something I'm all about is everything around the craft and the writing. Is like, how can you have a life that supports your art? And I think right now we all have to get very intentional about that. So reading Parneshia's poetry has been wonderful. Courtney, your books have been wonderful. I read one of your novels and your writing book. So will you tell us about those? Because those were wonderful to my bookshelf. I love them.
Well, first of all, I am the owner of a cat that wants to get out of my room. So hold on, you're going to walk with me for a second. I should have done this before. Get the heck out of here, man. Okay. Got a cat. I'm a lady with a cat. I am a writer. I have 4 books, 3 novels, and a nonfiction book. Sorry, now I have to plug this back in. 2 of my books are with the big 5s, and 2 are with the indies. And it was sort of, I've also self-published. I have a chapbook. I've tried, I think, every single way to get my writing out there. And I find that there's not just one way. There's so many different entrances into the thing that we're all trying to do. Plus, the goalposts keep changing. Clearly, look at where we are today, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. Oops, I'm here for today. Before, how do I do this one? Okay, there it is. Before and after the book deal. Oh, thank you, Parneshia. A writer's guide to finishing, publishing, promoting, and surviving your first book, which is sort of a reported guide to our crazy industry with almost 200 interviews with a lot of other people. I also run an interdisciplinary artist retreat, or I did before the pandemic hit. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a woman grappling with what it means to be a creative person right now, a professional creative. How I'm earning money, how I'm not earning money. I'm also a mother, which is no small thing in this world, you know, with a 6-year-old who's so excited to go back to school. So I don't know, I feel like I'm a lot of things right now. I feel fragile. I feel very up, down, in, out, want to talk, want to touch, don't want to be talked to, don't want to touch. I don't know. It's a lot. Not that our lives are ever really constant as creatives, but this is a tough time for sure.
Yeah. I wanted to also mention, I totally forgot my press, which was Sasquatch out of Seattle. And for me, I think like keeping close with the people who, you know, we all are worried about everyone who's making writing happen, making art happen, and sticking close with those, you know, those indie bookstores and the small presses and making sure we all support each other right now. One of the beautiful things I've seen is the outpouring of people helping each other and making sure that, you know, checking on each other. The anthology Alone Together is one that I'm going to be in, and that is a fundraiser for bookstores everywhere in the U.S. And so that's been very cool to see. There's been a lot of love, right? Like a lot of fear and a lot of love and a lot of everything, it feels like right now.
What's always so interesting, you know, when the world goes, and I had this revelation after September 11th happened, where I realized that, you know, artists are always called upon. And I told this to my friend, Renee Watson, who's a brilliant writer of young adult children's books, just an amazing person altogether. But I told her, I said, you know, it's the artists that are brought to the forefront when the world is like in great distress or great like jubilee, joy. Mm-hmm. We're called upon to like come to the forefront and express how the world is feeling. And yet we still have to grapple with the world about being appreciated, being paid, being, you know, worthy in so many different ways. And so it's really interesting in this time because we're trying to grapple with our worth, our value, because writing is a business. I mean, I try to tell writers all the time. I work on the side of writing, but I also am an editor. That's my job. That's what I do for a living. And so I meet so many different writers who are about the romantics of things.
100%.
Things. And I'm just like, if you like trick yourself into believing this is all about art and not a business, you will lose, period.
You'll lose very badly.
Yeah. You have to establish your value because somebody else will do it for you. And that's kind of in line with the idea of being a human being. If you don't establish your value, somebody will do it for you.
And most likely you'll be undervalued.
Exactly. And if somebody else does it, you will probably be really disappointed in the value that they come up with. So I'm trying to figure out what the value of art is. I'm trying to talk to authors. You know, everything has to be renegotiated in terms of what we pay, royalties, all that kind of stuff. Art is a business. And so, you know, I wonder, you know, especially, you know, Courtney, you've been in all aspects of how you get your work out into the world.
Yeah.
And I know there's a value on that, but it's also like, what are you expecting to come from that? Because you've seen all the different sides of putting your work out.
You know, it's poignant to me that you asked that right now, because I don't know what it is about this week. I guess it's the back to school thing. My birthday's in September. I always loved school growing up. Like I mentioned, I have a school-age child who at least next week, you know, is going to go to an actual physical school. So I always get this New Year's sensibility where I'm reevaluating. And this week, I'm really asking myself this question, like, been approached over the last couple of years, people who want to help me with my brand, you know, and I go back and forth on it. Like, sometimes I think, okay, I had 2 books that are kind of rom-coms with a big, powerful publisher. And now I have 2 more indie projects, and I have a memoir that's going to be coming out with an indie, and doing all these things on the side. And sometimes I feel really great about that and very in control. And then I work on the side in branding. And so once in a while, I will put that corporate hat on, and I'm able to look at my career and say, okay, yeah, she's doing a pretty good job, but you do better if you have one kind. It's the same similar kind of book that comes out every 2 or 3 years, and you're on Twitter really frequently, and you're engaging with your readers, and you know, people know what to expect, and you do become a household name and a brand. And I seem to be pushing away from that, even though I understand that's how you can earn money a little bit easier. You know, you can never earn it easily, I don't think, in our business. Or no, I know, you can't. But I don't want to be that available. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look at people who have huge followings online, and I think, my God, they're tweeting every, 17 minutes, sort of almost around the clock. And I don't think they have people doing it for them. Should I be doing that? Should I be that available? But then where's the writing time? Where's your privacy? Where's your intimacy? Where's the space within your heart to keep secrets and build stories from those secrets? Do you know what I mean?
So I'm writing a freelancers course right now, and I'm so all about this because I had this interesting experience where I had a story on women and money go viral. And so I became really enmeshed in the personal finance world and entrepreneurial world. And it's been such an interesting last 4 years. I went to a retreat of women who are all personal finance and entrepreneurial bloggers, and I've never heard women talk about money like this in my life. I came home and I doubled my rates, and I was like,
oh,
what?
Wow.
And then I got it, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so they have really helped me bring this out. And I want to report back to writers. I actually had a friend, I've been teasing him ever since he said this, but he is an editor. And I was talking to him about AWP actually. And he's like, yeah, I feel like, I could go for like some writers. He does like one-on-one clients. And he's like, I think some of them might be good clients. And we're like, is that predatory to go to AWP to like meet possible clients? And I was like, no, I was like, this is why writers don't make any money, because we refuse to do this. But I feel like you can go out. I follow a lot of people who do the marketing and the branding stuff, and they're here. And I will never go there because I don't want to be that salesy. I don't want to be that brandy. I don't want to be that like power connector, like blue, 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 leveraging all these people that I meet. I want to but I'm here and I need to make more money because I would like to retire one day and like live in a home when I'm an old lady. That's nice. And so I need to be like here. So I'm all about being like, I know that I would make more money if I like did it up and used all the filters and, was like in super sexy locations all the time. But I don't
super sexy locations
on an iceberg, on the beach, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's a happy medium where you can still be yourself. Be like, I'm also going to utilize these tools to like let people know I offer these services. I'm going to kick butt so that like I know that I'm getting power, or I'm like giving them. I'm using the power of storytelling for their ends because I believe in their ends too. Like, I got a really great ghostwriting deal and that I'm loving, and this woman is teaching me so much. And she just told me this week, the reason I hired you was because you followed up and you sold yourself. And it was so hard for me to learn how to do that, but that's going to pay my entire salary next year. So this book I've been working on, this novel, I've been working on for 10 years, and I would love to finish one day that's paid me exactly $0. I can get that done, you know? So it's fine. It's like, it is funding your own soul work with this other work that you don't let dehumanize you. It's always figuring out how you're setting your sail. So.
It's funny you say that. I find sometimes, especially on Twitter, there'll be a lot of backlash often about women authors who have sold out or something, you know, as if earning a relatively livable wage for our art is a crime, or we've swindled someone, or, you know, this idea that only the truly struggling writers are the real ones. It's hard for a lot of people, you know, what we're doing.
I love Ashley Ford she talks about that. And she's like, you never know what privilege those other people came from where they never had to do that. So don't ever let someone shame you for hustling to pay for your life and make your art.
Exactly.
Parneshia, have you, in your experience, have you come out with some wisdom around that?
I mean, the thing with me is because I have to live in two different worlds. Like, obviously, I have to be a poet, which we know doesn't pay much by rule of law, some law, crazy law. But it's also, I work in publishing and I work for a nonprofit university press. So by default, it's just like, here are the resources. They're not much. I can't compete with Penguin Random House. I can't compete with Simon and Schuster, but I still want to bring the best, you know, authors to the game. So, you know, one of the things that worked really well for me, at least on the editorial side, the publishing side, is talking to the poets and really talking to the poets of color, because they were looking for spaces. They needed spaces that would support their work. Because even if they went with a big house, even if they self-published, it wasn't enough for them to actually have the support and resources. And so I started to build this kind of program there. And I'm grateful to, you know, the people that I work with who are just rock star, who supported this. But it was like, let's build something like a trade program that actually supports the authors. No, I can't pay you what Random House pays. I can't pay you what Simon and Schuster pays. But at the same time, I can do just what, in terms of marketing, publicity, in terms of distribution, all that kind of stuff, I will make sure everybody in the world knows about this book. So it's about the priority. Like, are you a priority with the press that you publish? And so one of the things I learned is, you know, you can sign big advances, whatever that, I mean, people don't understand. I think authors don't understand the advances. You have to pay that back to the publisher. So there's that part of it. But it's also like, is it about the work? Like, do you want the work to live forever? And at least with our press, what we pride ourselves on is never taking a book out of print.
Yeah, which is a huge deal.
It's a huge thing.
Really big deal, and requires no small effort and resources on your behalf.
And it has to be extreme circumstances in terms of resources that we can do in terms of keeping the book in print. But for the most part, we don't take books out of print like leisurely. Like, we don't do that as a casual thing. So we built a program that I think is just as strong as any like of the big five in New York or any international publisher, because it's something about like, we want to actually look at the art the creativity, the author first, and then we talk about the business because it's important. And I try to make sure every author I talk to, I'm like, look, I'm sending you this contract and I don't want to talk to you for 2 weeks because most especially poets, they get so excited and they're like, I signed it. It's back. Within 24 hours, I signed it. And I'm like, nope, take it back. We're not going to talk for 2 weeks because I want you to sit with this and
so great.
And what you're signing. And I've had so many conversations where I've had to go line by line with the contract and explain everything. And I'm willing to do that because I want people to know what they're going forward with, because it is a business. It's not just your work anymore. When you decide to publish with a publisher, it's theirs too. They have just as much right as you have. So now we have to figure out how to like have a meeting of the minds and go forward. So that's where I kind of sit. I'm just kind of like.
Well, I love that you have this holistic view, Parneshia, because the tricky thing, and one of the reasons I wrote before and after the book deal was because I was really lucky. I mean, I'm an outsider. I don't have an MFA. I had amazing teachers in high school and college, amazing teachers. I didn't study creative writing, but, I had smart minds around me, and I was certainly encouraged, oh, you're good at writing, you should keep writing, but somewhat self-taught. And then I had a debut that it came out 10 years after I'd written it, but it still came out, and it did really well. I was very lucky. I had awesome editor. I was a lead title. I had all the good things, and yet I still wasn't prepared for what having a first book meant, which is, in fact, that you're expected to have another one. And I think something that happens, which sort of jogged my brain when you were speaking about your experience on both sides of the fence, is, especially in America, I don't think it's any one institution's fault, but I definitely think the MFA and women's magazines kind of school us creatives to think that, if you land a solid book deal, let's say it's $150,000 with, a Simon & Schuster, you can only go up from there. But that's just where you start, and your next book will be more, and you're actually might get close to that, $1 million book deal. Nobody sits you down. I haven't heard of this happening. Your agent, the editor saying, your book might flop. Your editor, your publishing house, we love you now, but if it really flops, we don't even want to see your second book. Or it might, you might be so unprepared for the way your book is received that you're unable to write again for many years. There's so many different scenarios beyond the debut. And I think that we have a culture that is so unhealthily obsessed with the debut that it makes it hard for those of us who are writers to remember the massive gift we all have, which is the gift of time. As long as we have a roof over our head and some way to get food on the table, in theory, we have time. We're not figure skaters, we're not professional athletes in the NBA. It's okay if we age. It's better. We'll have more to write about. So why are we all launching ourselves at these starting gates, expecting our very first book to be the end all for everything we do after that? It should hopefully be the first book in a career, and ideally, you would have a publisher who's ready to support that, a real partner, life partner.
And I think what's interesting about right now is, I don't know if you guys read the essay. I'm just going to use the letter F, the bread is dead. That's a great one for right now. It is just about the veneer of accomplishment and the trophies and everything coming off, and I think we're being very much like stripped down, even stuff like, I lived very like hipstery neighborhood in Seattle of just like your whatever, chamomile $15 cocktail. It's just like, we're all remembering what really matters right now. It's like, I'm lucky if I'm worried about groceries, a lot of people are worried. We're just brought down to this level of reality that I think we had blasted off from long ago. Many people. And of course, that's, you know, the inequalities are just getting more and more. Like I think it's a good time to touch base with reality again. And what is writing for me? Is it the award? Is it the big book contract? Or is it something that I would do even if no one were looking? And, you know, I think one of the topics that I've been talking with my coaching students about right now, especially people who are trying to freelance right now, like it's a very hard time. And even I have been attached to, you know, where I had kind of an essay coming out every week, every 2 weeks. And now that I'm working on my novel, I'm not getting that feedback all the time. And I'm like, I'm not getting my little participation trophy of the byline, you know, every 2 weeks. And that's hard. So I've really been trying to focus on, you know, internal locus of control, because everything's so out of control, and just saying, what can I control about right now? I actually do have an essay coming out about how quarantine has become an epic battle between self-care and self-soothing, because I got on the online shopping train for a while and that was no good. And so, you know, just what can I control about my writing life right now? I can't control how the publishers are doing. I can't control how bookstores are doing. Like, I just have to work on what is sacred to me in this kind of this era of where we're all talking about survival on some level, you know, in a lot of different ways.
Well, I mean, in some ways, what are you all thinking about? I mean, we can think about it for ourselves. Like, we've been in this world for a little bit, but there's a lot of people who are just entering, especially since all these MFA programs. I mean, you know, and I teach in an MFA program, and, you know, I see all these brilliant writers. I see what's happening. This has become the MFA program, you know, for all it's worth, for all the talent that comes out of it, it's still a business too. And there's some things that I love about it. And there's some things, you know, when I sit on the publishing side, I'm just like, oh dear God, why are they doing this? Because as an editor, I've been doing it long enough where I can receive manuscripts from people and I can tell who they studied with.
Really?
So there's that whole element of it. And so we can talk about like what this is all doing for us, because we don't know what's going to happen when we get to the other side, if we get to the other side of the pandemic. But there's so many people in the midst of becoming writers right now, like shaping their first manuscripts. What would you all like suggest for them going forward in this new world?
I mean, I do writing coaching on the side, and I work a lot with writers, emerging writers who are working on their query letters for agents. And I find so many of them feel really desperate. I actually work with a lot of people outside of MFA programs, and they feel so desperate. Like, this is their one time to find an agent. You know, it's now or never. They just finished their manuscript. And I find myself thinking a lot right now, having been a truly impatient person who used to be that kind of a-hole who, you know, wrote a short story and that afternoon submitted it. I mean, I was that person. I was a real dick, honestly. I've done a lot of work. And I think that came from the outsider thing, where you have a talent, but you're not surrounded by other talented people within, because I'm just writing alone, and all my other friends were like doing whatever they were doing, but they weren't writers. But my point is that I find myself right now thinking a lot about mental health. That's sort of my big thing right now. Stamina and endurance. How can I help others and also help myself to build up the stores of just emotional reserves and resilience to weather whatever is ahead, I'm working on a rewrite of a memoir right now. And I just had a couple days where I was super head down into it. I actually had friends who watched my kid for me. It was, I just went for it. And today I had to come up for air, and I was started to get that thing where you really are surfacing to air and thinking, okay, well, this is under contract. So in theory, someone's going to read it. Is it only interesting to me? Is this not good? Is it okay to be writing about this? Yeah, and you start panicking. So that's fine. I think that's a necessary moment, because there does come a time where we need to think about our reader, right? But still, how can we help train people to have those little gasps for air, then come back down, come back to their work, believe in their work first, second, third. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can be with the best house in the world. You can have the most powerful agent in the world. Guess what? Your agent might be in a house in Fire Island right now with 3 screaming teenagers, you know. Your agent might have a sick parent. Your agent might be sick themselves. There's not a lot of stability. So how can we help writers, especially emerging young writers, underrepresented writers? How can we help them believe in themselves? You know, how do you do that in an industry that's built on rejection? You don't have publishing. You don't have debut book deals without miles and miles of rejection.
And it's one thing, because Paulette, I really want you to answer this question. I want to interject for 1 minute because I'm working on 2 books at the same time right now. One is a collection. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm the worst. Like, I'm working on a novel and a poetry collection. And one of the things I thought about, especially in all of this, because the poetry collection is dealing with a certain personal trauma in my own life. And I started to think about writers who are not only like trying to get published, trying to get that first book or that second book or that third book just in the world right now, but they're writing about some really, really heavy shit right now. And I'm working through this book, and usually, because like you, Courtney, it's just like, well, I want to get this to my publisher. I want like to keep up and stay relevant and do whatever. But I'm writing about something so personal in a world that's so immediate and requires you to have an immediate response to everything that's going on. And yet it's taken me almost 10 years to write about something that has been like on my heart, on my brain, on my life for so long. And it's going to be a really, really personal thing to write about. So it's not only like, I want to get my first book, I want to get my second book out there, but you know, writers are writing about things that are so close to them because of, you know, obviously this time, but they've been waiting to tell their own personal narratives about what's going on. So it's kind of like, what do you do? So when somebody asks me, I'm just like, oh, well, you know, live, just like, So Paulette?
So I think if someone's new, connecting with writing community is one of the best things you can do. I love how, you know, Poets and Writers has a map of all the writing centers around the country. I wish there were more. But right now, with everything being online, like, for example, we have Hugo House in Seattle, all the classes are online, right? So everyone has access to the classes at Hugo House right now. And, you know, all the readings are online. And so just really connecting, it really helped me when I was a brand new baby writer. And I went to a class and we went out to drinks with the teacher afterward. And he was talking, you know, he to me was like, oh, you have like 2 books out, you know. And he was talking about someone who had 4 books out and made, you know, had all these other awards. And I was like, oh, that never really goes away. I can see how there's always another thing, right? And so just seeing rejection as a lifestyle, that's why I put all my rejection letters on my Instagram. And I color them pink because they're like my little pink slips of writing. And so you can just scroll through and see all the pink, right? And just seeing how that's really normal, seeing how feeling like you're not worthy, very normal, and just not making it about you, but making it about the gifts that other writers have given to you, like how Shel Silverstein made me feel when I was little. You know, you can make someone else feel that way. And it's a thing that's apart from you, but that you invite into your life with the discipline of coming to the page every day. And that's why I really love like the spiritual side of it. You know, I love my writer's meditation. I had never led a meditation before and I was all, you know, nervous at first. And now I'm like super into it. I'm like, yeah, this is a very beautiful, magical thing. Like, holy crap, we can make these lines on a page and someone, you know, 1,000 years, 1,000 miles away can know what we were feeling at that moment. Like, this is amazing, you know? So taking the ego out of it. And I think even as like you know, in meditation, you think a thought and you don't yell at yourself for having a thought, hopefully, sometimes you do, but you just kind of invite yourself to come back, right? So you're writing and you find yourself saying, this sucks. Oh my God, that's the worst sentence in the world. And you say, okay, my first draft, and putting what they call a soft label on it, saying, I'm judging right now. Is this my morning pages or is this my final draft to my editor? I think this is my morning pages right now, so we're not judging, you know? And so just like, you know, I think the person, actually someone said this to me, the person who wins is the person who enjoys it. And I was like, okay,
right.
I'm gonna try.
You know, yeah.
You know, like,
I tell people sometimes, like, rejoice in the fact that it sucks. At least you're realizing that, and not, you know, the only agent in the world that you want to work with. I mean, again, I don't know why I'm obsessed with this like figure skater thing, but we're not in the Olympics trying to do a triple axel. We can revise privately in our computer without anyone seeing what we're doing. That is a huge privilege. I wanted to do like a ding, ding, ding thing also to what Parneshia had said before. It's sort of an open question to you both. You know, Parneshia, you're saying like, I'm working on something hard, difficult, that's been on your heart, which I feel for you because that's rough, but that's a beautiful turn of phrase. But it's taking you time. It's going to be an incredible book because you're taking the time. What do you both think about this trend in the nonfiction world, especially of proposals? So I'm working with writers who want to start out on memoirs or some other nonfiction project, but they're too intimidated to, because they're hearing that they shouldn't even write the book. They should grow their platform and then send in a proposal. And they don't want to do that because they don't want to spend tons of time on social media or whatever the platform is. And also they kind of need to write the book to know what the book's about. What do you think about this proposal thing?
Proposals are really strange, and it depends on the editor. It depends on the publisher, because, you know, one thing I've learned quickly was just because somebody doesn't have a social media platform doesn't mean they have the most brilliant book ever that needs to be out in the world. And so, you know, I think I talked to you both about this a while ago when we were in the first stages of talking about this. It's like, you know, as an editor, there was a point where I sat on the phone with 5 generations of authors. Like I had a whole day where I was talking to authors, and the oldest person I talked to was 101, and the youngest person I talked to was 24. So, and then I talked to everybody in between those two ages and generations. And it's like, not everybody is on social media. That is not the only way of how to be a writer, how to have a platform. I mean, if you look at people like in the poetry world, people like Terrence Hayes and Natasha Trethewey. I mean, these people are not on social media, like actively, and they're some of the most important voices that we look to. So I don't get caught into the immediacy of, you know, how we're moving about in the world. I actually try to really look at the work. You really need to hone your work. And especially if it is nonfiction, because everybody, especially during this quarantine, I mean, I've received more submissions during quarantine than I've ever received. And
really?
Yeah. Everybody's thinking they're writing the great.
Everyone's writing their book.
Novel or the Bible or something. Like, I have no idea what's going on. But at this point in time, I think I have 573 submissions that I'm trying to figure out what to do with at this point. And, you know, I admit it. I put my hand up, like, I'm not the best because I like to read. Like, I actually like to read, take the time to read it, but they want to hear back so quickly. And so if they don't, they're like, did you get it? What's going on? And I'm just like, and so my email gets like, but especially with nonfiction, when people are trying to tell something that is really part of their lives, I have to take some time to understand what they're trying to do. Because we live in this moment, especially you all know, and I think everybody knows, like we're living in this moment where so many movements are happening to bring people's narratives who have been marginalized, oppressed, whatever the situation is, to the forefront. And so, especially as a Black woman, I sit and I have to think with things a little bit longer when I see somebody saying, this is my memoir, or this is a collection of essays talking about how I see the world, regardless of what their race is, where they politically stand. It takes so much longer. And yet I'm working against the tide of immediacy, because we live in a world where you have to have an immediate reaction, a auto reply, like a response. And I'm just not built that way. Like I was telling somebody earlier, I'm just like, I actually don't work this way. I actually have to take some time to understand what's going on. And somebody asked me if I watched like the Democratic convention, and obviously the Republican one is going on right now. And I said, no, because I knew it was going to be shrouded in all the tweets and the posts and this and that. And I wanted to take some time afterwards to like watch Michelle, watch Joe, watch Barack, so I can actually form my own opinion about what's going on. It's the same thing I apply when I get these manuscripts. Like I need time to actually look at it, but I'm also working in a world that doesn't work that way. It has to be like now. So I'm trying to like juggle those two things.
The immediacy thing that you're talking about resonates very deeply with me. I think that there's a time and a place for immediacy, and some of my favorite immediate times were I want just sugar-coated crap quality immediacy. I remember one of my favorite things used to be to do to watch The Bachelor and watch the live tweets from Roxane Gay, especially to actually more look at Twitter during Bachelor, like 2 years ago, than the actual screen. Because there's not a lot at stake. I mean, I suppose perhaps these people are looking for a partner, but I don't think so. Not really. It's just fun. But someone's memoir, like you're saying, someone's manuscript, it feels very immediate to them, because I think we do live in a world where we put something out there, whether it's an essay or tweet. Do you like it? Do you like it? Did I get any mentions? Do my friends like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? But, I think one of the problems, or not problem, the bacteria that we're seeing today around rhetoric and then sort of incapability of using language correctly comes from our refusal to think and ponder and linger over things. And some people have asked me, like, why don't you do more op-eds and quick hot takes? Because I do like to write about cultural moments, but I like to put my thoughts in novels. Actually, I think I write fairly quickly, but I do like to, I want to form my own thoughts. So it's not that I'm not interested in knowing what other people think about things, but I want to take the time to form my own thoughts first. I think that's important.
Well, it's so interesting, because the irony of all of this and the contrast of it is that we're in this immediate, like, you have to respond now. And I think that, obviously AWP and a lot of arts organizations can appreciate what that means and what we've been dealing with. But we're also living in a seek and destroy culture, like a cancel culture.
Oh.
So the moment you put something out, you haven't had time to actually like form an opinion. But as soon as you put it out, your whole world can be destroyed. So no matter what you believe in, no matter how much you've worked towards, all of a sudden in 30 seconds, a tweet goes out and that's it. That's your life. That's your career. So I'm trying to understand, what do we want? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to say about social media, it can bring you power and it can take your power away. That's one way in which it can take your power away. If you just like pop off a joke, and then take off in a plane, for example, and by the time your plane lands,
Right.
And looking back, like that particular time, I was like, yeah, it was really bad. Not a good idea. But I think so. There's one example when the pandemic started, I lost my main contracts, lost most of my work. And because I've been cultivating a social media feed over the last few years, I just tweeted out like, hey, I'm one of the writers, lost all my work. I had 11 people retweet it and my schedule filled up again. and that was one case where I was like, this is
Yeah.
a power that I have, like a network that people are looking in my direction. When I say I need something, I can get it, right? I'm connected in that way. It can also take your power away, your power of focus. I helped to write a book called Indistractable with Nir Eyal, and learned a lot about focus. And it's very serious. Those little breaks in your focus are huge, especially I hear from a lot of fiction writers as well, that especially novels, like Steve Almond was talking about, you have to, you want to write novels, like you really need focused time. And so I can be my worst enemy and be like, I have, a tweetable thought, I have an Instagram, like, let me check my Instagram. Yeah. Does anyone like me? Let me see, let me make sure. Right. And so I can lose power in that way. So it's a constant back and forth for me. And I am always wondering, am I going to look back and say, this made me a weaker writer, or I could have been more focused, I could have read more. I get a lot of pleasure out of it, and I get work out of it for sure. And I also get a lot of distraction out of it. And there's a lot of like ego wrapped up in it, where I wish I could just turn off the likes. Like, I don't want to know. Let me just put stuff out there to put it out there. But
Parneshia, yeah. How do you protect especially because a lot of your creativity and generosity is outward facing towards other writers. So how do you protect your own sort of sacred focus and your creative ideas for yourself? How do you, when you're writing for yourself, how do you trigger your brain and heart that this is me time, this is about my writing?
I'll be honest, it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. And, I used to have times where I wrote 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, but so much has changed in terms of the hours. I'm working 7 days a week now, just in publishing, and the thing about it is, what I've learned, and you said it best, Courtney, is I have a community. I haven't always utilized my community, but one of the things I realized is I need to establish people that I can just send stuff to, and they're not going to apply everything that I have to deal with in the world in terms of judgment, in terms of, will this sell or not, just in terms of the craft of being a writer. And so I've become really protective of my space as a writer. I don't share it for a long time until I just kind of figure out what I want to do with it. It's a mess. So I want to say to all the writers out there, it's okay if it's a mess. And, it's actually okay if you send it to somebody else and it's a mess. That's like somebody you trust. If you have one person or two people you trust that you can be a mess as a person, but in work as a mess, I have certain people in my life. Like, I can send something to my mother. She will read it, not understand a word, and she'll say, "That's nice." Oh, I'm sorry. But then I have people I can send it to who just like redline it up like it bleeds. I need that. So you need to establish, I think one of the most important things, especially as we move forward as writers, no matter what stage you are, first, second, like the most brilliant, won everything, you need to establish people who are going to help you be protective of your work. That you send it to when it's the greatest thing, but when it's also a mess. Because I realize I can't keep it to myself and expect it to get better.
That's true.
Other people to see it before I send it to an agent, a publisher, an editor. I need people to see me be a mess. And this pandemic, in some ways, has taught us what it means to be a mess. Like,
yeah.
So I've established people in my life who can see me, obviously, as a mess, but see the work as I'm trying to just decipher what it needs to be. So I've learned to relinquish a little bit of being protective and just being with my work, but establishing a certain trust with people I respect and love and will give me honest feedback on it.
Paulette, what about you? How do you protect your
huge,
juice?
I call them fake outs in my book. Like, you need fake steaks. Like, someone is waiting for my work. And I started a writing workshop that's been going for a few years right now, using the model that Chuck Palahniuk and Lydia Yukevich use in their group in Portland, which is you just bring work there, read it out loud. So you have no homework outside of it. It's just those 2 hours. And, you know, we have this very high trust environment where I can come in and be like, I wrote this today, like, this is first draft, you know, and I can bring my mess in. And that, you know, that helps me be like I have it on the calendar tomorrow. And I'm like, I need something, you know, I better write a first draft of something. It just helps me continue to get things out. And Courtney, I was thinking about you because I got an hourglass, and I actually really like it. I'm renting a room in this gorgeous 2-story house right now. It's like my dream house. And I'm like, I'm just going to pretend it's my house. I just rent a room. But I have a little space for a desk downstairs, which is my work desk. And then upstairs is just my writing room. And so I just have an hourglass. And I just turn my little hourglass. I have my notebook. I have no technology up there. So if I want to tweet something, I have to go all the way downstairs for it. And it's like, okay, is it worth it? No, you know.
Right,
so it's like the physical boundaries of I literally cannot do that right now, or I have to actually get up. It's not, don't leave your phone on your desk. Get your phone away from you when you're trying to write is such a big thing. Have someone waiting for it. Have that high trust environment for sure. That's been really huge for me. And yeah, just like, and keep asking yourself, is this working? And if whatever you're doing is not working, say, okay, I need to figure something out. Like, I've had really great, you know, accountability partners that have worked for a while and then it stopped working. And it's like, okay, you're constantly going to have to keep adjusting to stay your best self and needing different things at different times, I think.
For our AWP friends watching, Paulette is referring to, I'm like a real pragmatist. So I have like anecdotes in before and after the book deal about different ways to trick yourself into being a more productive person. And in one, I bought this like huge antique hourglass and an hour had to transpire before I could use social media. And it was great. And 5 days later, my cat knocked it and it crashed. And honestly, there's something really toxic in hourglasses. But, you know, you also have to train the people in your orbit to take your writing as seriously as you yourself need to take it. And, you know, again, I have a fairly young child, 6 years old. And usually women writers say to me, oh God, how do you struggle with the guilt, you know? And I say, you know, not to be a jack off, but I don't feel guilty at all. Like ever since my first book came out when my child had just been born. So I took her to book events, you know, in my arms. If someone needed a holder, because she was, you know, pass her off to the bookseller. It's a great way to get to know your independent bookstore sellers. But I just try. I have a husband, and he's a filmmaker, so we literally cannot be shy about like, surprise, we work from home, both of us, and even though we're still in our pajamas, and you want to play Legos, it's actually mommy's writing time. So, you know, deal with yourself. Or you know, doing the best I can, but I'm really trying to make it clear to my neighbors. I'm in a very small town where people, well, pre-COVID, just like come by all the time. And the way I've arranged my life, Mondays and Tuesdays, I mean, do not come up my driveway. Don't call me. My phone's off, because Mondays and Tuesdays are my writing days where I try to go super deep and feral. I don't have social appointments. I don't look at my email. I don't take phone calls. I just get deep, deep, deep on my stuff. And I've been doing that for years. And so now, you know, people know I put up an out of office if I need to, not all the time. And my child seems to like start to get it, you know, and I feel a level of respect coming toward her. Like, you know, she'll say, oh, I wish you could play with me. And that hurts to hear. But guess what? Wednesday, I'm going to come up, I'm going to feel good probably about what I've written, and I'll be a little bit more attentive and there for her instead of being fractured into so many different pieces of my different identities all throughout the week. So that Monday and Tuesday block off is something that's really, really sacred to me, using hokey things like the out of office, do not disturb signs, the airplane mode on your phone. I mean, technology is a distraction, but it also has a lot of ways for us to let other people know not to bother us, you know? So don't be shy about using those very same tools to protect your writing time.
Well, it's also a situation. I mean, Courtney, you bring up so many different wonderful, I think, issues that writers and I think the AWP community will appreciate. You know, let's start off with the fact that I think, you know, gender is being talked about in ways that it's never been talked about in terms of how the working, the living, the surviving according to genders. And since however you identify in terms of your gender rules and the rules that apply to gender, because as we know very well, there were certain like religions in terms of male versus female. Well, guess what? That doesn't even apply anymore. It's all spread out in so many different ways. And so it's so interesting because I've been, you know, reading so many different articles, watching so many different interviews during this time about especially women talking about women who want to be out in the world and do what they have to do. You're not doing any different from a woman who has two jobs, who may drive a bus and be a school teacher and have to figure out how to fit in time with their kid and how to get home for bath time or make, you know, meals. But at the same time, I think also men, and not to, you know, ignore the genders. There's a cross culture of genders now that identify in certain genders and sexualities and all that kind of stuff. But if we look at also men, this is the first time where men have had to be accountable. Like actually, because it's always been a situation where women had to make a choice. And it's bullshit. You can't have it all. You can't. You can have it all, but something is going to suffer. Like you're going to go back and forth. And I don't think historically men have been given that option where they've been put in a position where you have to make a choice. Like you want to be out in the world working or you want to be at home taking care of the kids and being part of that life.
They're allowed, right, to shine and be totally stellar at one thing and suck generally at all the other things. Whereas this having it all myth says to women specifically, really, you should be perfectly well-rounded and just, you know, a fantastic friend, mother, wife, sister, counselor, mentor, whatever the heck, nurse. Just, you need to be great at everything. And when you're not, people ask you, even other writers will ask you, oh, well, what did you have to sacrifice to get where you are, you know?
Right.
And it's not about that. You can have a messy house, no house, a great house, an awesome house, hire someone else to help you clean your house. You can do what you need to do and have some things that you do great and have some things that you suck at and that's just being a human.
Right. You know, I listened to NPR the other day and they were talking about, you know, what this pandemic has done for women in the workplace. And, you know, all the strides and all the things that we've done in terms of, you know, achieving in the workplace, this pandemic could set us back 100 years because of what's going on. Because women who've worked so hard to be in positions, and especially positions of power or any position in the workforce, are now having to be forced, like, to choose. They got to be home with their kids. Their kids are home. So, like, all this gets circled back around to, okay, what, again, a choice. What's more important? That being said, the happiest women writers I've seen have been women who make it very clear that they have to be happy and healthy first. Yeah. Nobody, nothing around them is going to be happy or healthy unless they are happy and healthy and getting their work done. Because everybody's going to pay like you wouldn't believe if that is not happening. And children, you know, I have a 2-year-old niece who I adore and love. She is cute, isn't she?
Too.
This is the first time I've been around a baby or like a little person for a long time. And I realized through her, like children see everything. They're not necessarily, especially during the pandemic, like she was really scared about wearing the mask. Like she wasn't sure what's going on in it. And there's only so much you can explain to her. But I realized that children are the most resilient and adaptable humans in the world. So as long as you get them on the same page of how you want to live, what you see, what you believe, what you love, you know, they're actually pretty rock star about it. And when I go out in the world and do different things and I take her with me or I have her with me and I say, we're going to read books all day, or we're going to like climb trees all day, or we're just going to like scream or whatever. She takes 30 seconds to say, you're nuts. But then
she gets on board, right?
I'm with it. So for women, at least speaking as a woman, I'm just like, if you don't claim your self-care, your well-being, and your happiness and what's important for you to move forward, if you don't make everybody on the same page with that, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't be able to work either. You know.
I think it's great for mothers to model, like, I am an artistic being. I'm a person. I am not just the person who brings you lunch and drops you off at school. And it is valuable. I am a woman and my creativity is valuable to me and to the world. And I'm going to put a portion of my life toward that. I think that's a really beautiful thing.
I wish we could all have a group hug right now, real bad.
This is awesome. I know we've gone over so much, but whatever.
We have, and we're getting the little ping that says we're up for time. But I mean, I think that this is such a nice note to end on, because this is selfish, but it definitely links back to what I said that my big thing right now was, which is mental health, you know, and what you're saying, Parneshia, that like, you know, all people, but hey, especially women, we deserve to be happy and healthy and claim that for ourselves. And
right.
I actually have to go because I have therapy. So look at me walking my walk.
Well, can I just end, if you all don't mind, if I can end for us, just with 3 things. I promise. They're short. So 3 things. This is from Gwendolyn Brooks, and it's a poem called God Works in Mysterious Ways. It's a quote from her poem. If thou be more than hate or atmosphere, step forth in splendor, mortify our wolves, or we assume a sovereignty ourselves. That's the first one.
Wow.
The second one is from Nazim Hamid, and it's a quote that says, living is no laughing matter. And the last one is a quote from one of my heroes, Mae West. You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough.
Thank you, Parneshia.
You guys are
rad. Thank you, Paulette.
Here at AWP.
Thank you, AWP.
Thank you, Colleen, Sheila, Anita. They were so boss in putting this together. So
thank you, everyone, for your work.
And good luck. Good luck to everyone who's listening.
Yeah.
We got this, I think, right? We got this.
You all take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.